Fairfax County will have the opportunity to voice their concerns regarding police response and practices. This comes on the heels of a video that was released in the death of Natasha McKenna, very hard to see, who was tased while in jail. Ultimately, it led to her death. Now, just days ago, the Fairfax County officers involved were cleared of any charges. McKenna's case is the latest of several well-publicized confrontations between police officials and people with mental health issues. Joining us now is mental health contributor Singh, who specializes in violence and risk assessment. He is the CEO of the Global Institute of Forensic Research. Dr. Singh, always good to see you on the show. So it was very hard to watch that video and then to learn that Ms. McKenna was a diagnosed schizophrenic, not on her medication.
Sure.
When you watched that video, what was your thought?
My thought going into it, the information that I had before I had seen the video itself, was that there was a tremendous amount of concern about how the situation was handled. To be honest, after watching the video, I thought it was handled very appropriately, actually. This was obviously a very tragic case. However, when it comes to certain things in terms of training, in terms of correctional officers and police officers, it really drives home the point about how important it is to be able to have access to training on how to be able to deal with individuals with mental illness. To give you just one example, it's very understandable that these correctional officers in this case were talking to her as you would anyone, say, comply with me, do not resist, do not resist. Certain things like this, these kinds of commands, simply are not comprehended by individuals in the throes of acute psychosis, as seemed to be the case here. So it wasn't necessarily being non-compliant, it's that form of communication simply is not capable of being comprehended in that kind of a state.
Sadly, the officers were cleared, we should say that, but she ended up losing her life. My question is, can you not administer antipsychotic medication? Where would medicine have helped in this situation?
Mental health screening is absolutely critical when it comes to involvement in the criminal justice system. It's become the de facto situation now, Allison, where hospitals have largely been replaced, unfortunately, by jails and prisons as the primary site for mental health treatment for offenders. Something that's very important now, though, is to be able to take into consideration that about 15% of all police contacts are going to involve someone with a diagnosable mental illness. 15%. And in terms of individuals currently in the correctional system in the United States who are incarcerated, we have approximately 100,000 individuals or so who have been diagnosed with the same kind of an illness, or psychotic illness. At the same time, some of these medications, it's important to keep in mind that they can cause heart arrhythmia, so abnormal heartbeats and such, and rhythms. That's very important because the reason why something like a stun gun, like a taser, will actually cause some sort of cardiac or respiratory arrest is because all of us have what are called cardiac cycles.
Okay.
This is the biological equivalent of what happens in between one heartbeat to the next, all those biological rhythms. And what happens is that when you are tased, if it happens at the wrong moment, obviously impossible to tell to the outside observer, it can actually cause the heart to go into a state of almost chaos, of excitement.
So the illness might, and then being tased,
sure,
ultimately led to this. I guess my question is, when I'm watching that, and if that were my sister, or that were somebody that I knew, and she was a diagnosed person dealing with a mental health challenge, it would be equivalent to someone having a physical health issue and being mishandled. Like, I'm looking at the video there, this woman is sick. So how can we move forward so that no one else has to lose their life in this matter?
Absolutely. The leading approach right now for law enforcement and correctional officers is called CIT, which is Crisis Intervention Training. Now, this is routinely available in the Washington, D.C. area for law enforcement, so Metropolitan Police, Georgetown Police, Capitol Police, all have access to this training, but the training's not mandatory. And the training is a 40-hour curriculum that it specifically explains how to be able to deal with individuals, specifically how to de-escalate these kinds of situations with the mentally ill.
And with the numbers, I feel like now is the time.
Absolutely.
Do you feel like that?
It's one of these things where I always feel bad, Allison, that
right,
it's these kinds of situations that bring these things to the forefront, but we really have to capitalize on the situation and make sure that we use this as a stepping stone to be able to move forward.
Well, the dialogue is open tonight, and so step in the right direction. Dr. Singh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Allison.
Okay, let's head on over to Tucker Barnes. Got to look at